Good evening, St. Louis, and welcome in to City Central Postgame right here on STL Sports Central. I'm Matthew Rocchio. That's Will Bratton, and we're here to break down another bummer loss in a very bad season for St. Louis City SC. This time it's a 3-2 loss up in a part near Chicago as they take a 2-1 lead in the second half after being down 1-0 in the first half, and then the defense completely falls apart. Brian Gutierrez, a Chicago homegrown, with a gorgeous strike to put the nail in the coffin and finish this one. But an overall very disappointing night for St. Louis City SC, considering everything we saw. Will, your breakdown of what we just saw across tonight, a very late night here as it was pushed back originally for about an hour and a half for a rain delay.
Yeah, we saw a reenactment of a lot of similar themes we've seen this season. I mean, this club concedes a lot of goals at the tail end of matches. They continue to fall apart after scoring a goal or two. I mean, it's so many of the common themes. You know, it's a small mistake. So in the first Chicago goal that opens up the match, it's just a miscommunication. It's a terrible step in the midfield that leads to the entire midfield being deleted from the play with one singular pass. The back line's hung out to dry, and it's a wide play, which is what we knew Chicago was going to do. We talked about it in Boots on the Ground. We talked about it, I think, in the post game after Nashville too. And I talked about it on social media this morning. I mean, we knew this is Chicago's game plan, and that's unfortunately the way it went for that first goal. Obviously, there's, on that third goal, it's a similar situation. No one comes and fronts the ball. It's 22 yards out. Someone's got to get out there and front that ball. I mean, it's just unacceptable. It's just a little bit too reactive, not enough urgency in some of these defensive moments. And this is a theme that we've seen a lot of times this year. But, there were some positives to this match. It was not a match where I'd say City played overall bad. The first half was very slow, and it wasn't as high energy as I would have liked to see, but I wouldn't say they played bad. But playing just okay and even playing, decent is not good enough, especially with where they're at in the standings, and especially with the fact that they have such a healthy roster now. Playing just okay, in these types of moments is not good enough. It's not acceptable to just play okay. If this team was super injured and they put out a similar type of performance on the road and this match didn't mean a lot because they were in a playoff spot and blah, 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 then maybe I'm like, all right, go to the next one. But these are the types of matches that your fans are banking on. You got to win these matches so that they can continue coming to matches. They want to buy merchandise, whatever, support the team. This is a match you got to win, and you got to put out a very heartful performance if you're going to lose. And I don't really felt like that was the case tonight. So for me, very disappointed in the overall performance. But again, it was definitely not City's worst game of the season, but just given the circumstances, very, very disappointing.
Yeah, there's a long way to go to the worst game of the season, but that doesn't mean anything. Yeah, it was a bad game. I mean, they got outplayed in almost every facet. The fact that they were up 2-1 what was definitely kind of a benefit. You would have taken that to the bank, obviously. I mean, you're taking any win to the bank for St. Louis City, but they weren't playing better than Chicago even when they were taking that 2-1 lead. They were just finally finishing some chances, kind of like last week when they didn't outplay Nashville the full game or really for any large chunks, but they finished their chances, and that's why they won that game. This one, they didn't even outplay Chicago for large chunks. It really was just the first 20 minutes out of the gate in the second half, the only time they really commanded that game. The first half, it wasn't terrible, but they didn't ever really control any situations in the first half. And so, you just, same thing with Nashville. All Nashville did last week was win 20 minutes, and we criticized them for that. City, all they did tonight was win 20 minutes. And so that's a bad game, in my opinion. And more so than that, that's a letdown from what you saw last week in Nashville in a lot of ways. Again, they didn't dominate the game against Nashville, but you were able to command chunks of the game, and it was the complete opposite tonight. I know it's an away game. I know Chicago's talented. They match up well against you on their side, but they controlled that far too much for what I wanted to see from St. Louis City tonight.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't know if I have much of a better way to sum it up besides like just an okay performance is not good enough in these types of moments. I mean, that's the biggest thing it comes down to me. It just wasn't the caliber that you expect.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. It wasn't good enough, and that's the bummer because there was some nice plays. Obviously, we had some good moments overall from when we saw Marcel Hartl got the goal. That was pretty impressive. That was pretty special. So seeing some of those moments were awesome, but it's too many mistakes. It's too much lack of composure. The turnovers in the midfield that lead to these easy goals. What led to the first goal that we were talking about on Twitter, where for some reason the midfield stepping up. We got somebody, a Twitter user did a very good pointing out that the Sangbin factor of that first goal, you can't really control it. But the midfielders just leaving the midfield just completely wide open to be exposed like that. That's something you can control, and they fail to control it almost in every facet of the game tonight.
Yeah, I think this comes down to a thing I've talked about in some of these moments with Chris Durkin, that I love how much of a workhorse he is, but dude, he gets so ahead of himself and he gets so up the pitch in ways that really annoy me personally, in the way that I would like to see this team play. Now, Critchley might be telling him go and do that, and that's fine, and so I can't fault him for that. But just the things that I want to see this team do, it's so frustrating watching us concede goals repeatedly to sixes that don't really play a true six a lot of the time. Despite the fact that we're playing a double pivot six, there's two of them, and no one's staying back and playing that true six and being that extra center back outside of possessional moments. And it's just so frustrating. I mean, that there's two goals in this match and so many goals in recent memory, that have been the decider in a lot of these matches for St. Louis City, and what has turned into be a really frustrating and disappointing season, have come from those types of moments in the midfield where they're disconnected from their back line because their CDMs are trying to press too high. And if you're going to do that and your back line's also sprinting up in some sort of an offsides trap, that's fine, but that's not realistic in 90% of scenarios. It's very situational. You're able to pull something off like that. So someone has to be kind of staying back and filling that space, or you're going to get cut apart in one singular pass like St. Louis had happen 4 or 5 times this evening, one of which resulting in the first goal for for Chicago, excuse me. See, I'm saying other teams' names that we've lost to. I mean, this is
similar
stories.
Yeah, I got you. Eggplant emoji jumps into the chat, and please, here on STL Sports Central, jump into the chat if you're here. If you got questions, you got comments. Obviously, people are going to be frustrated after tonight. If you're frustrated, let us know why. Let us know exactly what's got your bugaboo. If you're feeling positive about anything, let us know what you're feeling positive about. We love talking about that. Eggplant emoji, excuse me. Well, it's tradition. I must lead off again that they find a way late to turn wins into draws and draws into losses. Yes, more points dropped from a leading position. I believe they were leading the league about a month ago, the last time they really did that, and this is only going to add to it. That's just been a huge problem with this team, and that's what happens when you don't have the depth and you don't have the injuries early in the year. They don't have an excuse for that this time around. Everyone's pretty much healthy, other than Cedric Toyshirt and Michael Wenzel, and apparently for some reason Falu Fall couldn't play the full game as well, and Henry Kessler was obviously working back. That's why that was their switch there, but it's problematic that same thing pops up now that everyone's healthy and everyone's playing better. David Critchley in the post-game presser just now said, they need to see progression. They need to see themselves getting better and improving every week. And he's talking about how they did that, but I can see parts where they did it, but the results all that people are going to care about. And so the same thing with him saying that he thought they defended one-on-one, the majority of the game pretty well. It's hard. You might be right. When we break down the film, that might be true. But when you let up 3 goals, that's a takeaway no one wants to hear.
Right. I mean, he's talking about the micros, and you got to look at the macros in these types of situations. And the most important macro is St. Louis City SC lost 2-3 because of some pretty poor defensive mistakes, that are very preventable and honestly scouted. I mean, like, we knew what Chicago was going to do. This was no secret. Chicago's done it to every team, in the Eastern Conference this year. And that's why they kind of fell off their hot streak a little bit, was because teams started to kind of understand how to beat Chicago. But nonetheless, they're an extremely threatening and talented team. And if you let them get on their game and abuse those wide spaces like St. Louis did numerous times tonight, they're going to punish you for that. So it's like, yeah, you can shout out Klaus for having a good match, despite, not really getting as many touches on the ball as you usually see. Obviously, the first goal is entirely created by him, and Sangbin being able to, progress the ball and hold up play. And you can shout out, various other players for good moments, and some players who, Tomas Ostrak has been on fire lately. He had a fantastic match too. But it doesn't excuse the macros, which is, what's the big picture here? The big picture is you scored 2 goals on the road. Nice. You could have done better given the match, but you conceded 3. And honestly, all 3 were very preventable, and that's unacceptable. So That's the only thing the general fan is going to care about. And I promise you that for the leaders in that locker room, that's probably the only thing they're going to care about too. It's only a mere silver lining and a pick your head up to hear those types of things. It's like, we defended the one-on-one space as well. And it's like, yeah, you're right, coach. We did, but we lost, coach. We did.
the crucial moments, it wasn't there. Again, I guess I can see what he's saying. He was talking about they didn't lose a lot of big moments against the star players, but at the same time, the second goal is Falou Fall getting beat one-on-one by Zinkernagel. That's where you lost a spot. It's not necessarily a one-on loss. It's more of a system loss on the first goal, but that's a bad defensive play that keeps happening with your midfield is exposing you by letting someone sit between the lines and then starting an attack off that. So, I mean, that's not something that's new to this team. This is a problem that keeps happening that they need to solve. And one of the ways they can solve that is by getting a new six. And that would be helpful. That's one of the big needs I think they have going into next year. Winger, six, probably got to add
left wing, six,
a starter.
And left back.
A starter at one fullback spot and probably a depth spot at the other fullback spot because you're probably losing one or two guys in that thing. David Critchley just gave an answer about Thomas Totland. He's healthy. He's fighting for spots, and they needed more defensive players in these matchups, which Conrad Rollum played right back today, which I think should be a little bit of a message because, again, Conrad Rollum said it himself. He's not a right back in a four-man back, but he is now. So
I'll say his shift was good, though, and he played it like a right back.
Yes, he's playing it well.
His recovery was fantastic every time he was caught up the pitch. Dude flies sometimes.
Yeah, Conrad Rollum's an extremely talented player. There's no doubt about that. But it's interesting to me.
He's a different profile.
Yeah, just they're gonna need fullbacks. They're gonna need a six. They're gonna need a winger because those are the players that keep making mistakes. Those are the players that aren't stepping up, and that's what happened tonight again. The defensive midfield wasn't consistent enough, and it allowed too many issues, and that's why you got a problem there. Everyone gets back and corrals Zinkernagel on the Gutierrez goal, but he has so much pressure. He has so much time that everyone runs back, and that's why Gutierrez has so much space as a trailer to get that shot off. Yeah, it's an incredible shot and everything. It's not a high XG chance. I can look up exactly what the number is, but it's not a high XG chance from Gutierrez. But the bottom line is he shouldn't be able to get
that shot off cleanly ever.
Yeah, it was a 3%.
22 yards out on a pop ball like that.
Yeah, it was a 3% chance.
Right.
And so it wasn't necessarily. It was a crazy shot, but he shouldn't be having that chance trailing like that because you should have had a body back to help with Zinkernagel in the first place so that all three of your middies don't all have to get back in behind the ball and then leave Gutierrez with all that time. That's where the mistakes kept happening today was the midfield. And Ostrak had a great game offensively, but he's playing up and he's dropping back. I like what Ostrak did. Edward Leuven, I got to go back and rewatch it because it's always interesting what he's doing defensively. I'm not sure if we should be criticizing Edu on this one defensively. Maybe we should be, but all I know is that the midfield wasn't good enough in multiple spots today. And this is the second game in a row. And it's probably not the second game in a row. I'm just remembering all our breakdowns from Nashville. And there was too many times, and it didn't bite him in the ass, but there were too many times when they gave somebody a chance through the central midfield, and they need to solve it, bottom line.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree. I think the film watch, the rewatch, I don't even know if I want to do it tomorrow. I think I want to have a good day tomorrow, so maybe I'll save it till Monday. But I think that's going to tell a similar story. I think we're going to slow it down. We're going to see the same things we saw in this one because I really didn't feel like there was a lot of layers to this. It was just defensive mishaps. City didn't do quite enough with opportunities that they had. I thought Sailor Pompeu, when he came in, for example, people might say, oh, he did so good because he took the ball 40 yards up the field, but he did nothing with it every single time. He's taking it into semi-dangerous spaces, but the opportunities aren't there, and then he gets a turnover. That's forced or unforced, really, with him. And so, those are the types of things we might see, from midfielders in the subs on the wings and everything like that in the rewatch. So I think, Leuven definitely, it wasn't his greatest match, defensively. Obviously moving Hartle to the wing, can I don't like it because I don't like it, but you know what? He actually didn't play bad tonight, and all things considered. So it's hard for me to really criticize that tonight. So I guess I'll swallow the pill on that one. But
Edward Leuven,
it's
in fairness, just looking at the numbers, and that doesn't always tell us a lot. But Edward Leuven did just have one tackle which was successful. He did have 8 recoveries of the ball, so he was there for the secondary balls, which is more what you want him for. So credit there. Chris Durkin did have 3 recoveries, 7 defensive contributions with a couple clearances, a couple tackles, but he was dribbled past 3 times, which according to FootMob did lead the game and St. Louis City with 3 times being dribbled past. That's rough. On the offensive side, I was criticizing the midfield from the offensive side in the first half. In the second half, got to give them a little credit. Edward Leuven had at least, maybe a couple more. He had at least 8 passes into the final third in the second half alone, which obviously led City and would have been second in the entire game. His 9 for the full game were second in the entire game. So Edward Leuven did come into play, had a solid game passing, especially in the second half. If you go back and watch some of those buildups, I'm sure Edward Leuven had a big part in them, obviously, like he always does. So I think we're getting a solid overall game from Edu, but the point is he needs somebody consistently winning the ball so that he can pick up the recoveries. Durkin had an okay game tonight by numbers, but to your point, there were some positioning issues with him, and obviously on that first goal, I think that's positioning. I think that's Ostrak and Leuven and Sang Bin, who the 3 people I circled. So I think that's that is a mistake defensively by Ostrak and Leuven, but when you get a guy like Ostrak who gives you a goal and an assist, and you give Leuven doing Leuven stuff, I guess we're giving him a little bit more of a pass. We got to point out that there's a mistake there because as midfielders, especially central midfielders, you have to have both of these responsibilities and balance it well. But there's a reason why we're focusing on the 6th spot. Maybe it's unfair, but there's a reason.
Right. No, I mean, yeah.
Go ahead.
No. That's all. I don't really have anything to add there. I think there's a chat about Vollum being expensive, which is yeah, he is.
Yeah, we have no point at any point this season entertained the idea that Conrad Vollum's going to be here past this year. He's a nice 1-year player, and that'll be all she wrote. Have a fun career in Europe, making a lot of money and costing a lot of teams money. Matt Z, 17 goals against in the last 15 minutes. Thanks for pulling the stat, Matt Z.
Yes, that is true. And that is a league leading, by the way. And that was a league leading before they gave up another one tonight. So there was 16 earlier, I'm pretty sure.
And for me, a lot of those early in the season were the fault of maybe not having the best defenders in your back 4. But a lot of those goals going back even earlier the season when you didn't have the back 4, again, it goes back to a lack of cohesiveness and consistency in the center midfield. And I'm going to keep banging that drum because it's been an issue the entire season. And part of the reason was you had injuries early in the season, but everyone's healthy right now. And having Falu fall completely healthy or completely ready or completely integrated, maybe you cut out that first goal because maybe he's able to keep step in step with Kuipers better than Timo Baumgartel is. I'm not sure. I don't think that's a ridiculous guess to make. So there's like an argument to be made of whatever stopped Fall from getting the start was maybe one of the last times you can say, well, they didn't have their 100% lineup out there. But for the most part, they're healthy, and we can't use that complaint anymore. So why does it keep happening? To Matthew's point, it is borderline pathetic. Why does it keep happening? I think it's because the system exposes the center midfield too much, and they don't have the talent in the center midfield at the 6th spot. That's my big giant theory right now, and I could be wrong. I probably am.
Honestly, I tend to agree with you here. I mean, every now and then Rock and I will go at it a little bit on certain things. Yeah, but I completely agree with you there. I think it all comes down to we don't have a defensive like work rate 6, like a true 6 that is just very, very, good at, interrupting play. And Chris Durkin showed glimpses of that, especially last year. But I'm not, getting that game from him anymore. He's a crazy man. He's gone off the rails. He's pressing up like crazy. And like I said, if that's what Critch wants him to do, I can't fault him for that. That's a system thing. But if that's the case, then I disagree with the system, and that needs to change for me because it's costing this team points repeatedly. Even under Melberg at times, it was costing this team points with a similar type of situation. There was one player I did want to mention really quickly. And that is Sang-Bin Jung, because I actually felt like, despite, it felt like an off night for him. I felt like he was doing really good things, or attempting really good things consistently, but none of them were working. It was like I think his passing percentage was, I think, the lowest on the team or something like that. He had a 68%, I think I'm seeing, accurate passes, only 36 touches. two dribble attempts, 0 were successful. He was not great in duels, lost possession 14 times. Not a good game for Sang-Bin Jung. But I don't think that was he was doing everything wrong. I felt like his touch was just not there tonight because I felt like every time he was on the ball, he was making the right decision, and it was just not working out. And it was getting I was frustrated for him, not necessarily with him, but for him because I don't know. It wasn't like I was watching him, make a ton of mistakes that I felt like were just mental lapses. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I
agree.
want to take a little criticism away from him because I feel like somehow tomorrow people are going to be wringing his neck, and I don't think that's necessarily fair. You can criticize that it was a pretty off night for him for sure, but I feel like he will bounce back from that. I think he brings a lot to the table for this club.
Yeah, it was a rough night for him, and only 36 touches, which is a lower number than guys like Chris Durkin tallied up this game, and Durkin got subbed out at the 67th minute. So that kind of shows you, and Sang-Bin played the full game. So that kind of shows you the lack of getting the ball to Sang-Bin. So credits Chicago. Gutman's one of their best defenders. I think actually across every statistic, he is undeniably their best defender, and he's their left back. That's who Sang-Bin was going up against a lot of the game. And there were some parts of the game where Gutman kind of put Sang-Bin in his pocket. So that doesn't surprise me too much. That was going to be a tricky matchup for Sang-Bin, and not getting him the ball more than just a couple really long balls, not getting him the ball in space at all is really going to limit what Sang-Bin's going to give you. So I'm going to, again, go back to my criticism in the first half there and look at the lack of the midfield and the wingers getting other players involved and getting themselves involved in dangerous ways. You got a weird look on your face. What's up, buddy?
I was looking at Roman Burke. Roman Burke had a minus 1.52 goals prevented, like expected goals prevented in this match. And that feels really harsh. I was just kind of looking at some of the shots. That's the face I was making.
The XGOT on Gutierrez is only 4%. The XG is 3%. The XGOT on his is 4%. So that's probably
where pretty much the entire thing comes from for him.
They're really saying that Berkey should have got to that Gutierrez goal, which seems to me a little punitive.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that was really like a world-class strike, to be honest with you.
Zingernagel apparently
had to jump on it. He nearly got there. I don't know.
Zingernagel's XGOT was only 28%. That's another one that's pretty low for the fact that he had a pretty juicy chance right in front of Berkey, and yeah, he wrong-footed him and everything like that. But to stick Berkey with 28% on one where the guy's right in front of him like that
right.
Seems XG's really coming after Berkey today. I didn't feel like any of those were really his fault objectively. That's a little harsh.
I would completely agree. That's kind of why I was making that face. I was
that's fair.
Scrolling through stats and I was like, what? Minus 1.52.
Eggplant emoji. Is it just me or does Celio look lost?
Yes.
Did he ever fully recover from last season's compound fracture? Yeah, because he looked better. He looked better he looked a lot better than this in the early parts of the season when the team was struggling than he has the last 2 months. So this is a guy who is struggling to make an impact off the bench for a team, whereas he was having a little bit more success when it seemed like there wasn't as much pressure. The spot was pretty much his, and teams weren't just sitting on his inside foot. And now I think there's just a lot of variables that have contributed to Celio struggling. I don't think any of them are necessarily related to the compound fracture. Although, he did take a little bit of a knock on the shoulder. But I think it's the opposite one. I think he busted this collarbone and then took a knock on this shoulder. So they could be connected, but what I'm seeing from him doesn't look physical. I mean, he hasn't put a shot on target in God knows how long, and that's been an issue the entire season. But his dribbling and being an impact player in that facet, that just fell off a cliff. But it was better at the beginning of the season. So you'd think if it was an injury thing, it'd be something else.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think he, like you said, he started off the season looking fantastic. I mean, he was absolutely killing it. He was very effective in either creating space or creating a potential goal scoring opportunity by, with his carries and taking the ball into dangerous spaces. I thought he was looking great. I was thinking he was going to have, a career season for sure. And then everything's just gone wrong for him. I mean, he does kind of look lost out there, genuinely. I mean, he's not every time he gets the ball, a lot of times teams are allowing him to still progress the ball, but into spaces where it's just a trap, and he's having all these turnovers all the time. And like Rock said, he hasn't put a shot on goal in I don't even know how long. We've seen him miss, against Aston Villa, and then oh gosh, who was it that we played right before? Was it Minnesota or something?
Yeah,
right before Aston Villa, that the exact same play in both of those matches, where Celio Pompey with his left foot finishing a backdoor service with uncontested and missed both of them. And then tonight he has one that maybe a very on fire Pompey who nails towards the end of this match tonight. But there have been a lot of other moments too where a lot just you want to see better from him, especially a player who can when he's hot, he can bring so much fire to this team and so much danger to the wide spaces that this team really lacks, especially before Sangbin was added. So yeah, you definitely I want to see Pompey get back on track, and you're definitely not wrong for pointing out that he does look a little bit out of sorts as of late.
Keep bringing the fire in the chat. I got to tell everybody about our friends over at DraftKings. They're the reason we're here. DraftKings Sportsbook, where the crown is yours. It's promo code STL Sports. Nothing beats relaxing on a hot summer day. And woo, was it hot today, and watching some baseball or even some soccer. And the simplest way to get in on the action is to download the Pick 6 app from DraftKings. It's crazy simple. All you got to do is pick more or less on the stats for two or more of your favorite players. Start with two, and then you can build from there. And then boom, you're in the mix for big cash prizes. Pick 6 available right here in Missouri. Don't miss out on the fun. Do not settle for smaller payouts. Switch to Pick 6, and right now new customers can get $25 in bonus picks with their first deposit of $5. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code STL Sports right there. That's code STL Sports for new customers to get $25 in bonus picks with their first deposit of $5. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with DraftKings Pick 6, where the crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
All right, we are back here on the City Central postgame. I'm Matthew Rocchio. That is Will Bratton. Make sure you hit that like, share, and subscribe buttons. Also the bell button right there, so you know whenever we're going live, which is whenever there is an event in St. Louis. If St. Louis City's playing a game, if the Cardinals are playing a game, we are going live right here on STL Sports Central after the fact, even when they have hour and a half weather delays that slow things down and have us here till almost midnight. I'm going to bring in a couple of tweets that I was getting over on the X. If you want to interact with either of us, you can. I am ROCCSTL on the X or the Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Will, what's the handle for you, sir?
Will Bratton STL on X or Twitter. And while Rock is pulling up this first tweet, I did want to give some good news since it's been a kind of a somber evening. Sporting Kansas City lost, and that's all I'm going to say on that, because who am I to be score watching our rivals?
There you go. Mr. Biggs, too many players who don't fit their natural positions. Not enough from some of the higher price players, although this was Ostrak's best game. We need a true 6. Too bad Blom didn't work out. Yeah, I mean, they tried getting it with Durkin. He fit well into the roster because of the U22. He has an option after this year. Because he's off the U22 contract at the end of this year, I don't see them picking up the option because he struggles. That'll free up money to replace him at the 6th spot. So they've tried to replace that 6th spot after Bloom didn't really work out. It just those moves also haven't worked out. When you talk about players who don't fit into their natural positions, I mean, that's a Cedric Toyshirt thing, and then I don't know who else that would necessarily apply to.
He maybe is referring to Hartle being on the left wing tonight.
That's his natural spot.
Yeah, he's kind of a LCM, I guess.
He likes playing. Yeah, it's exactly where he likes playing. Right. So I mean, it's Cedric Toyshirt, which is an issue, but I mean, it's an issue because Klaus worked out. Like if where they were last year, it looked like Klaus was on the way out. He hadn't scored in forever, and so they needed as much 9 depth as they could get. And now Klaus is playing great, and you have Bescher after picking up his option for cheap, and so it just said he doesn't really have a spot. But I don't know how many other players are necessarily in that area. And if they are, there's a good chance that City can get rid of them either easily this year or already on the path of getting rid of them because they have an option or a contract that's expiring this year. Eggplant emoji. Is Critchley the guy next season? I feel like if Lutz gets it wrong again, ownership has to step in and find a new sporting director. Yeah, you don't get to hire more than 3 coaches. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, I would be willing to bet money that even Lutz himself would tell you that if he gets next coach wrong, he knows. He's
got one more roll. He gets one more roll of the dice.
Right, exactly.
And he might get another like $5 million to spend before they're like, listen, here, champ, we're gonna have to see something before more cash comes out.
Yeah, you know what though? All things considered, the summer window so far, I don't think anything else is going to happen, but there is possibility with Joachim Nielsen's buyout now being formalized. A move could come, but Sangbin, Padelford, the loan, especially if you can keep Padelford, that's fantastic. And Fall, those are really good acquisitions. And not to mention that, an offseason signing that went very under the radar of Haziel Orozco signed to City too, now made his way to the first team and has been very impactful for this team, even scoring a goal last weekend against Nashville. So he's definitely done good things over this last year, obviously not including Olaf Melberg because that was a colossal failure. But in terms of players, not really any complaints. I mean, Conrad Baum and Timo Baumgartel have been great. They were the only players brought in the offseason with a roster that should have been very good this year. But unfortunately, a bad coach and bad injuries completely ruined that. So now we're left scrambling and trying to think about what can Lutz do in this coming winter or even, in the last couple of days here at the summer transfer window. But you're absolutely right. If Lutz gets it wrong again, ownership's got to step in. Is Critcher the guy next season? That is the $1 million question for me. With the way things are going right now after the Nashville win, if they had won tonight after that Nashville win, I would have felt pretty confident that Critch is the guy. But now you've got, the rest of the season that it would take to genuinely convince me for Critch. It's got to be I saw Rock shake his head no, and I know what that's about. It's the P word that we don't say around here anymore after a loss tonight. Yeah, no, we're not saying that tonight.
Eggplant jumps in talking about the VAR moment that I guess took away the penalties. VAR similar to NHL video review where the officials have camera angles. The TV broadcast does not. They got the no penalty right, I think, but the angles shown on Apple were not clear at all. Yeah, the angles weren't great. That's a good question.
In my opinion, the ones they showed us, it was clear. I mean, the one that was from the back, see his arm tucked at his chest, and it obviously hits his bottom of his wrist because the ball goes straight down. Unless he has enormous pecs and it hit the bottom of his pec and went straight down, it's obvious his hand was tucked to his chest when that ball went straight down. So for me, it was conclusive evidence. It's absolutely the right call. But to answer your question, though, I'm not sure. I know they do get the same angles that the broadcast gets. I'm not sure if they get additional angles or not, though. That is my question.
Yeah, I think they do have more angles than the broadcast does.
If you watch them do the VAR, and when they show the referee staring at the screen, you can see the screen lines up with what they're showing you on Apple TV. And usually, one or two of those are the angles from the broadcast, literally. I saw it while I was watching MLS 360.
Oh, wait, hold on a second. According to an FAQ, this is why this sucks. I think it's changed. Now, this is from 2017. I feel like this has changed since
That's then. Got definitely changed, yeah.
Yes. Because in 2017, they only had TV.
You want to know something pretty crazy?
Go for it.
Yeah, in 2017, I was 13 years old.
Shut the I don't want to talk to you anymore. So that was the case then. I think it's changed now, but as with most things in the MLS, I've read it 10 times and forgotten it 12. So I'm not 100% sure, and I'm having trouble finding it right now. We were having a lot of conversations in my Twitter during the game about the team build because people were bitching about the offense not being good enough, and I continue to say that the defense isn't good enough. I feel like I won that round. Mainly from how this team played today. The offense isn't good, and I acknowledge that winger, should everything happen in the roster, let's say they bring back Roman Berkey, and it's on another TAM deal. They
Another TAM deal or a DP?
Let's call that the DP spot. And then Klaus is freed up on a TAM deal after they pick up his option. And so then they lose Chris Durkin off the U22. So
then you can add a DP.
They can add a DP or they can add a U22. I think there's a lot of reasons to argue for the 3-and-3 model and adding a winger DP because then you need to have an attacker who's a designated player. At the same time, I also think it's very realistic that they bring in a TAM level attacker and then they stay at 2-4 and the U22 is the 6 or the left back, which I know people wouldn't like, but I think is a completely reasonable way to see how they would build things out using the 2x4 or 3x3 models. And I just think that's realistic. So I know people want to see the big name winger, and I think it fits in. It just wouldn't surprise me if this winter is more of a get 3 guys in who are all around the same level as opposed to big name winger and then a couple other role players. I don't see that being the direction. I'd like it. I'm not saying that shouldn't be that probably should be the ideal direction this team goes. If you think about how you build an MLS team, I understand everyone else focuses on offense. I'm not saying you need to focus on offense to that point. You don't need to spend $17 million on your attack like Chicago does. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but you can go other ways. But I do understand the argument that either you got to have a bunch of TAM level attackers or one of your DP needs to be one of your best attacking players. I get that argument.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's completely fair. I mean, I think if you have an attacking group that's Sangbin, Klaus, and then a designated player left winger, and then Cello at the 10, and then you have Leuven sitting under them. I mean, that's a really, really, really strong attacking group. So, all things considered, I think, a left wing could make a lot of sense for the designated player slot. And I would like to see them go designated player instead of U22. I think they have so many good players right now that they need to maybe, not emphasize way too much on trying to get younger because this team did get young. This is a pretty young, one of the younger teams in the league right now. And so, especially when Alfredo Morales potentially leaves, that will lower the average age of this team by like a year or two. So, because he's an outlier. So him and Berkey are the oldest guys by far. So I don't think a U22 is absolutely necessary. I think this team has a lot of really good young talent. I want to see some top quality, get paid good money to come in here and be a significant player on this team. And then I want to see, a very solid player at the 6 and the left back spot. Maybe, one of those your TAM, high salary player, and one of those maybe like a max senior salary that isn't TAM, type thing, like your $743,000 player. There's a lot of ways that it can happen to bolster this team, but there's only a few things that need to be added outside of replenishing some depth, as a lot of players I'm sure will walk this winter. So a lot of roster overhaul is absolutely coming as we talk about a lot on Boots on the Ground, which, by the way, if you're not watching, you got to watch Boots on the Ground with Matthew Rocchio, who is right there, and myself, who is right here. We do it here on STL Sports Central, usually on Thursdays, but it also airs on the radio on the Low Information Station on Fridays at 3 p.m. We're giving you the best breakdown of St. Louis City that you can find on the internet, back to the visuals you can only get with us. And it'll help you understand the game at a much higher level in case you want to rip your hair out just like we do when we're going to watch the film back of the Chicago match. And kind of like we did even watching back the Nashville match, despite it being a very fun victory. Still some moments in there. But we're here to break down all those types of moments. And obviously we're here after every single match on the City Central postgame show. Definitely make sure you're tuning into everything that Rock and I are doing on those two shows.
There you go. Good job pumping it up. Not a lot to be positive about, but we'll try to find it. Some things to be positive about. St. Louis City St. Louis City 2 continues their winning ways. They win 3-1 today. Brendan McScorley puts another one on the marker, an absolutely beautiful goal. Makai Joyner, another goal for him as well. So we'll keep diving into the City 2 fun because that's the thing we got to look at this team. That's the only team that's bringing home actually any meaningful hardware this season is St. Louis City 2. They continue to lead MLS Next Pro. They're hopefully going to go on a nice little playoff run. So we keep talking to some City 2 on Boots on the Ground. Every week we'll be here on the City Central postgame. Hopefully they give us more to actually talk about as they close out this season. I don't think they're making that playoff run, but come on, let's get some actual wins shore up that defense,
Right.
get Kessler and Fall in the starting lineup at the same time, and let's see some actual W's, Will Bratton.
Yeah, I would love to see it. I want to enthusiastically say it with you as much as I can, but we're feeling a little down in the dumps. But you know what? St. Louis City SC playoff hopes are gone, which means you can focus on one thing and one thing only: having fun. We can watch St. Louis City and hopefully see some cool goals from guys like Joao Klaus and names that we love and want to see do really well next year. Hopefully we can see them have a good end of the season this year. And Rock and I will continue to grasp at straws to bring smiles to your faces, no matter the score.
We had a good end of the show. This has been the City Central postgame on STL Sports Central. If you just came in, you can scroll back on the YouTube. If you want to listen to this tomorrow morning to recap what that game was, you can go ahead and find it on wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, what have you. For Will Bratton, I'm Matthew Rocchio. This has been the City Central postgame on STL Sports Central. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit that bell button. We'll be back next week when City has another matchup. Again, tune in this week for our midweek podcast, Boots on the Ground. That's all we got. Have a great night, St. Louis.